This is a human-powered concrete mixer. It uses no gasoline, no electricity, and it's supposed to be able to mix a bag of concrete in less than a minute. Today, we're gonna be putting this to the test to find out if it's a complete gimmick or totally genius on Modern Builds. So this tool is called the Steele Mixer. Apparently by just pivoting the basin, it's able to mix up the concrete because of its unique shape. And before I jump into mixing with this, I want to set a baseline time and effort for mixing a 90-pound bag using my go-to, which is just a big plastic tub and either a hoe or a shovel. Let's get started.
The game plan is to do time trials between these two methods, but first I want to make sure that my concrete to water ratio is locked in. I'm in the Joshua Tree Desert where it's pretty dry, so I'm going to go for a little bit more of a watery mix than what I would make in a different climate. But with that in mind, I still think this is a little bit too much water, so we'll keep adjusting. After wetting my form, I could scoop my concrete tub over and pour it where I wanted. I put a mark on my tub where the water level was for the previous pour, and I did a little bit less. That way I make sure that I'm getting consistent results. I really liked this consistency, so I put a mark on my 5-gallon tub with a Sharpie, and that's where I'll always fill it up to. Off camera, I mixed up one more 90-pound bag so I could pour this out and start doing a little bit of screeding. This mix has pretty good flow, so I was able to get it into the corners and flattened out easily. My water to concrete mix is honed in, and now I'm gonna set my timer for the next 3 bags. Let's run it. I didn't want this to be a sprint, so I kept it at a pretty standard pace. Also, if you go too fast mixing in a tub, the concrete and water is gonna spill over the sides, and you don't want that. Mixing this way is pretty low effort, which is good if you're doing a lot of bags. And it's pretty easy to scoot this tub around and pinpoint where you want to pour. And these mixing tubs that you can pick up from Lowe's or Home Depot are convenient because they really don't have any corners, or at least they're super rounded over, and that helps a lot with mixing and making sure that everything is incorporated. And here we are, mixing up our 3rd bag. I'm gonna get this mixed, and then that's where we'll call it.
All right, that was a total of 13 or 14 minutes.
Really quick, I'll get this last tub poured and we'll screed those 3 bags. Periodically, as you mix these bags, you want to make sure that your slab is flat as you go.
And now it's time to try out the Steele Mixer to see if it's any easier or faster.
I added the concrete first, but that ended up being the wrong move.
And now I'll add 80% of the water I think I'll need and start tilting it back and forth. In the directions, it's said to push it all the way to each side and not to go too fast. Ah, dang it. Or else that might happen. Getting the hang of this.
I did read the directions that came with the mixer, but I forgot that it said to add the water first for better mixing.
All right, and now I think we're ready to pour, which you can lock the bucket in place like that, and I guess shovel it out.
A flat square transfer shovel is for sure the move for this. And this is convenient if you want to pinpoint the concrete in any location. It is a little bit slower than just pouring it out though.
All right, and then there's just a tiny bit in the bottom still. We can just lift that out, I guess, and pour. Okay, first thought is if I need to shovel each pail out, I would rather use the bucket. So I'm gonna move closer and rotate the mixer so we can hopefully pour right in. The only problem with this plan is it looks like it won't pour in. Maybe if I make the stand more narrow, it would pour where I want. Still feels stable. All right, let's give it a try.
Keep in mind, I was still doing this in the opposite order, adding concrete and then water. I'll reverse that soon. That's my mistake, but I do want to keep the video candid and leave that in there, but make sure that you're aware it is user error. The mix on this one came pouring out like soup.
Dang, you can tell the bottom of this didn't get mixed and the top was just soup. This is not what I was hoping to happen, that's for sure.
All I know is I'm glad I did a couple of test batches before starting out the timer.
That's not what we're looking for. On this one, I'm gonna add water to the bucket, then I'll add my concrete before pouring in the rest of my water.
All right, so now we're following the directions correctly and we can start judging the Steele Mixer properly. I wanted to get it pushed over as far as possible without spilling and really shake it.
Dang, even still, it's sticking to the bottom. It's literally as far over as it can go, and there's still a ton down there. Man, I am kind of bummed out because this is taking a while, And I really thought this thing was gonna be cool. I'm worried it just might not be able to do more than a 60-pound bag. But online, it says it can do up to 100.
I just stayed persistent and shook the fire out of this thing.
There we go. The bottom finally started to move. Whoops. Awesome. Now, what am I gonna do about pouring it? Oh, that's heavy.
Ultimately, I just lifted it to be able to get into that back corner. It's pretty heavy.
All right, now I'm gonna set things up. I'm gonna do 3 in a row and time it out.
Once again, I'm going for a steady pace here. It's not a sprint, but first reaction I would say is it is a little bit tougher pouring the bag into this mixer than in the pail. The Steele Mixer website says that you can mix a bag of concrete in under a minute with this thing, and that is true. Going back and forth is pretty low impact as long as the mix is going well, and it takes a little bit more effort than using a shovel, but just carrying the pail over saves a ton of time. And with a 60-pound bag of concrete, this would be really, really easy for me to do. That's one bag down, completely mixed and poured in under 4 minutes, and it's time for number 2. Making sure the whole mixer is wet before you pour your concrete is a big help.
This is getting way easier. At least for this much concrete, whoops, adding water first seems to be key.
This is kind of a tough criticism because if I was any stronger, I wouldn't really be saying this, but it was quite a bit easier scooting around the first mixing tub on the ground than carrying around the Steele mixer. But this would have taken way more bags if I was doing a 60-pound bag each time, so I didn't want to do that. I do think a fair criticism is to say that I was bending over a lot more mixing this, as you can see, than I was using the first setup. I'm not crazy tall or anything. I'm 6'1", but I think maybe some taller handles or a slightly taller stand would go a long way.
Stop the time.
I was clearly breathing a lot more heavy after 3 bags, but before we talk about that, let's get this screeded out and flattened.
Overall, the 3 bags with the Steele mixer took about 1, maybe 2 minutes less, but I just feel exhausted after using it. With 100 pounds plus water, it is heavy to carry that thing. And with no effective way of pouring it into the form, it just seems like maybe it's missing something. So far, I'm a tiny bit hesitant on the Steele mixer, and I think it's fair to do a bag and talk about what I've been thinking in real time. One thing I will say is I'm used to working with the tub and a hoe, and even though a 90-pound bag is heavy, I don't have to lift it like I do with the Steele mixer. Pouring right onto the tub on the ground is pretty convenient, I won't lie. Dang it, and I just made a huge mistake. I forgot I'm supposed to put the water in first. Let's hope that doesn't end up being a problem again. I promise I didn't do this on purpose, but once again, this kind of shows how it's a little bit difficult to get everything to go to the side unless you add your water first. Although it looks like I'm gonna be able to get this mixed. All right, I'm gonna cut to the pour and then we're gonna restart this. I wanna be fair to the mixer. I had a little bit there get undermixed on the bottom. We're not gonna judge based on that.
I was able to stir all that up and get any powder mixed in.
All right, I'm gonna remember to pour the water first and I'll slosh it around. This cleans the sides and I think just keeps everything lubricated. A very important step.
And next, I could add my concrete. And yes, I agree I should probably be wearing a mask.
And now this time, I'm gonna push everything to the side and the bottom should start moving too. There we go, you heard that? There we go, this is working really well. I think I'll do this about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 more time, and we'll call that good. I also found a couple of shakes like this on each side are a little beneficial. Now, let's pour it. One thing I'll definitely say is it's heavy. With 90 pounds plus water in the hopper, this thing really loses a ton of convenience points by not being able to pour off the stand. And then we'll check to see how well it was mixed. Pretty dang good. Just a little bit dry on the bottom. I really wouldn't complain about that.
I'm gonna get this flattened out, and then I wanna give a big thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring today's episode. Your one-stop shop to build your own website or online store, and that has never been easier with Squarespace's cutting-edge design tools like Blueprint AI, Squarespace's AI-enhanced website builder. Plus, you can get discovered fast with Squarespace's integrated SEO tools. They do all the technical back-end work to make sure that you show up more often on search engines. With Squarespace Invoices, you can get paid faster and impress clients with on-brand invoices. You can streamline your workflow from proposals to contracts to invoices and payments all in one place. And with Squarespace email campaigns, you've got all the tools you'll need to engage clients, promote your services, and build your business built in. So to learn more, make sure and follow my link down in the description. That's squarespace.com/modernbuilds. And then when it's time to make your site live, don't forget to use my code ModernBuilds for 10% off your first site, store, or domain through Squarespace. Big thanks to Squarespace and you all for watching. Now let's keep working on this concrete. So we're back from our break, and we've got a couple of more concrete bags to mix, and I want to give my commentary on all of this at the end, so make sure and stay tuned. This batch mixed up really well, just a couple little small clumps I broke up with my hand.
And it just doesn't make any sense to pour it into the bucket to then slide it over. So I'm just racking my head trying to figure out, am I doing something wrong?
I know I sound like a broken record wanting to pour off of the stand into the form, but it makes sense that you should.
It's a little bit grainy there on the bottom. You can see it's still just a baby bit clumpy. Nothing terrible at all. Still not complaining about that. But I do think I'm gonna go back to the plastic tub for a bag or two just to see if I'm crazy in thinking that that was tougher. One convenient thing is that I can just cut this bag in half and I don't have to lift it up into the hopper. Now for just 1 or 2 bags, that's no big deal. But for as many as I had to do today, it was getting a little tiring, I won't lie. Even though that was messy, it was low effort. Adding water is about just as easy, no difference in that step, but I guess it really doesn't matter what order you do it in here. Well, one thing I won't pretend about is that the Steele Mixer is a little bit faster. As long as you put your water in first, the mixing process is quicker than what I'm doing here in the tub. One big thing that I'll point out though is this is about as low effort as it gets. I'm just pushing this material around a little bit, and if I go too crazy, I'm gonna start splashing over the sides. This is a task that you could just do all day long. And once I get one side, I start scraping this direction, and that allows me to get up into this corner over here so that I can get any parts that are still a little powdery. Now this, so far, has probably taken twice as long as the Steele Mixer does, but I would argue I've got a little bit more of a consistent mixture. The majority of the time, there are a couple of clumps that I've gotten on the bottom of the Steele Mixer. And I know that scooting around with this pail isn't very glamorous, but it is effective. You can get it right where you need to go and pinpoint where you want to pour. I think I'm only gonna need 1 more of these.
Aside from time and effort, price really is a big factor, and these mixing tubs are about 20 bucks, and a hoe is less than that, and that really is weighing on my opinion quite a bit.
And now it only seems right to do our final bag, or what I think is our final bag, with the Steele Mixer once again. I think I've got a good idea of how much work and effort goes into each, and I'm gonna try and do the perfect run with this one this time. And a solid pour. We're gonna get a good first turn and not spill, maybe a tiny bit. We're not gonna spill a lot, at least. Not sticking to the bottom, and that's a really good thing too. And it doesn't matter how much I shake, I've still just got a few of those crumbly bits at the bottom, and there's no way I would be having those if I was mixing it by hand with a shovel or some kind of tool like a hoe. But now, we'll lock it in, which shouldn't pour out, but it did a little bit. And this might be the only time having the shovel is convenient. Oh man, that's not a good mix. That really is the worst one yet.
I wasn't sure what was happening, but the mix here wasn't right. I dumped it out into the pail to find out.
See, here's a couple more of what I mean. And you would think they're hard, but it's just powder on the inside. That would be so easy to break up. In fact, we'll get this fixed up.
I really was surprised the mixer didn't break up clumps that fragile.
It's still a tiny bit more watery than I'd like, but we're in the desert. It's not gonna hurt.
Now that all of our concrete is poured, I could do our final screed across this pad. Overall, we're far from perfect, but this was a fun project to do, and I'm happy with the results with a one-person crew.
That is pour complete, but I still got a little bit of work done before I can take the time to give my final thoughts on these tools. I'll use my trowel to smooth all of this concrete out and try and get rid of any small inconsistencies that I can. I am so far from a pro at concrete, but I do want to make sure this looks as good as I can make it. After that, I'll use this tool called an edger, which rounds over all of our edges. Go figure. This isn't necessary, but it does help give everything a clean, finished look. And then finally, one more time, I'll go back with my trowel to smooth that out again.
And here's a look at it. We'll let this cure overnight.
So now it is time to share my thoughts. Is the Steele Mixer a gimmick or is it genius? And to be honest, I think it is way closer to genius than a gimmick. I can identify 3 changes that I would make with the Steele Mixer. Number 1, I really think you should be able to pour out from the stand. Being stuck shoveling the concrete out or carrying the whole hopper just really leaves you wanting to be able to pour it where you want. I don't know anything about engineering or how you would need to alter the stand, but that alteration would raise this like 2 out of 10 to me. Change number 2 is something that the Steele Mixer company has actually already thought of. There is an actual mobile stand that allows you to wheel this thing around rather than having to pick up the mixing tub when it's full of concrete and water. I'll make sure and put some footage of it playing right here so you can see. If I were to do a project with this again, it would be a must-have in my book because then you can move this around and I think pour it like a wheelbarrow. The third thing I want to bring up isn't a change, it's more of just a concern. I think that this mixes concrete at like an 8 out of 10 quality. For most of the bags with the right amount of water, I got a really clean mixture, as long as I added the water first. But on the very last one, you guys saw how clumpy it was still at the bottom. I'm totally happy to accept that that might be user error. If anybody else has used a Steele Mixer, please leave comments down below if you've also experienced a tiny bit of inconsistency in the mix. Still, I'll say the mix was like an 8 out of 10. It wasn't perfect, but still really good. And so now that leaves us with the question, would I recommend the Steele Mixer? Well, for $240, this is about the same price as you would get an affordable small electric mixer. One upside that this has is you can use it anywhere and you don't need a power cable. But one downside is this is actually more work than mixing with the tub, or at least it was for me, with that 90-pound bag. It was probably like 110 with the water, maybe 105. Now, I want to be really kind to the Steele Mixer company because they were kind enough to send this to me. They sent me an email and asked if I wanted to try it. I thought that this was so cool. I had no idea that this existed, but after using it with these 2 configurations, I would actually mix the concrete for this pad with the pail. But who knows, maybe I'll upgrade my Steele Mixer on another concrete project. That way I give it the ultimate test. And just a couple more quick thoughts. If I wasn't young and able-bodied, I think that this would be an awesome mixer for projects around the house. As long as you don't go lifting the bucket around, this is a really low-impact way of mixing up concrete. I can see this being really handy for anyone just a little bit older or with some kind of disability. This could also be really convenient if you're mixing in a confined space because all you really need is this much room. But it is pretty cool and convenient that you don't have to power this up or plug it in, anything like that. But at the end of the day, this tub costs like 20 bucks, and most people already have a hoe or shovel laying around that they can use to mix the concrete with. I wanted to judge this on speed and effort, and the Steele Mixer beat traditional mixing by just a couple of minutes over 3 bags. But the overall amount of effort that it took to mix 3 bags was way easier using the traditional method of a plastic tub and a hoe. So anyways, that's the video. I really hope you like this idea of gimmick or genius. I don't know, this kind of idea could take on any title. I want to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Make sure and like, comment, and subscribe. And I'm going to end the video on a side-by-side competition time lapse mixing the 3 90-pound bags. Bye, everybody. Whoa, almost fell there. See ya. Ah, dang it. Oh, man.